I'd like to welcome you to today's NBAA Thought Leadership webinar. DOMs spill their secret to running the most efficient flight departments. Before we get started, I'll briefly review some of the features of this webinar platform. We will be accepting questions for our speakers. To ask a question, please type it into the Q&A tab on your screen, and one of our speakers will respond as time allows. Q&A is open for all attendees. If you see a question that interests you, give it a like using the thumbs up icon so it gets pushed to the top of the list. Public chat is also open. Keep an eye out for comments and notes from your peers as you enjoy the episode. Attendees will also get the opportunity to participate in polling questions, which will appear on your screen throughout today's webinar. We would also like to take a moment to thank our webinar sponsor, Veryon. And with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, JD Smith, Senior Product Manager at Veryon. Over to you, JD.
Thanks, Elena. Well, folks, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world today. Thanks for joining today's webinar. Today, we're joined by three gentlemen that have an incredible amount of experience in the world of aviation maintenance. So Jay Bell, former Director of Maintenance, 25 years of experience. Bruce Goss, Director of Maintenance of LabCorp, 25 years of experience. And Derek Pop, Director of Maintenance for the Bowler Company with 15 years of experience. So that's a combined 65 years of experience represented by this panel. So I'm really excited to dive into these topics. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and jump over into kicking off the webinar. So we do have a number of topics. We're going to start with a quick poll. So if you would respond to the poll question that you see up on the screen. We're going to have a lot of these polls throughout the webinar. The goal is for this to be very interactive, and hopefully the audience can somewhat drive the conversation, and we can tailor the conversation to the questions and responses that we get from you. So in order to get the most out of the hour, please respond to those polls. All right. Okay. So for those of you that gave a low score, we certainly hope that you get valuable insight from this webinar and hear firsthand from other directors of maintenance their tips and tricks on how to run an efficient flight department. Okay, so we'll go ahead and jump to the first topic. Okay, enhancing aircraft operational readiness is our first topic here. So, gentlemen, what steps do you take to reduce the downtime and improve aircraft availability for operational use?
Well, in a high cadence operation, you have to look at your reliability numbers. That's what we use a lot. So we have, known issues, known failures that will cause an event to last, several days. So those are the parts that we tend to stock more of. We try not to rely on our vendors as much as possible, and to carry all our AOG needs in-house.
Yeah, I would agree with Bruce on that topic. Is knowing what your reliability issues are with your airframe, and stocking those parts, and kind of relying on yourself, kind of vertical integration of a maintenance department, keeping everything in-house, and you can control things better. Adding to that, I would say, as far as availability and reducing downtime, knowing and understanding your aircraft's maintenance planning document, how the maintenance inspection program is laid out, and developing and packaging your work scopes during your scheduled maintenance inspections to capture as much as you can for that event. So maximizing your downtime, your scheduled downtime, and a lot of that, and that varies from department to department. Depends on what kind of operation you have. But that definitely, working with your chief pilot, your scheduling department, and kind of get an idea how to project out, that helps tremendously in keeping your aircraft available for your company or your principal.
And I would follow on the parts as well. I think especially since COVID, logistics for parts on any airframe, any platform, is becoming more and more difficult. And it's seeming as the years progress here since the pandemic, it hasn't seemed to get much better over the years. If anything, it's gotten worse. So Simple parts that you'd think a manufacturer would have in their warehouse, they don't, and they have to go directly to the vendor. And now we're looking at counter shipping. So, and there's all sorts of possibilities for errors in that chain. So, yep, parts and training, I guess, is the other thing that I was going to throw in to the discussion. I'm a big proponent of technical training, and knowing these airplanes like the back of your hand definitely makes for a more efficient troubleshooting process when you do run into issues on the airplane. Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about training, but I rate it pretty high on my list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. Knowledge on the aircraft, and continuing knowledge, not just in the initials, continuing to learn and going out. One of the notes I had in here for this answer was coordinating on a frequent basis with your technical representatives for your aircraft and figuring out what are the issues today. And you'd be surprised, a good conversation with them, you get some great tips, and that certainly helps a lot. Yeah, Derek, it's funny you mentioned the parts. The first thing that you and I talked about this morning was as soon as you got online, I said, "Do you have a fuel probe for a Falcon?" So it's still it remains an issue, and you have to be very very proactive, kind of what Bruce was talking about, and stocking those parts.
Right. 90% of my fleet is manufactured overseas. So there's that part of it that you cannot fix one way or another. So you just have to prepare.
I was going to say, I hear from operators really all over the country and all over the world how challenging it is to source some of these parts. And, we had a question come in through the chat here that I think is interesting. How have OEMs and parts providers performed in keeping your flight department efficient, and what can they do better towards that end as you're specifically, I think, as you're trying to source those parts and stay ahead of the parts procurement problem?
Yeah, I think Derek mentioned a downturn in availability throughout COVID that's really affected a lot of these manufacturers. And now as we're seeing them try to ramp up their production again, they're going back to these vendors and finding out that some of them have gone out of business. And they're not able to support their overhead without the interaction from these large customers, right, with the different manufacturers. So, I think in a lot of cases, what manufacturers can do to help facilitate that is, kind of a health check on their suppliers to make sure that, they're still surviving, that they have enough business to keep the doors open and the lights on. Whether or not there's a demand on the parts, maybe they can push something else through those vendors that make those small key parts that you can't live without.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We often don't see that side, and I never have myself, but I imagine that if you take a look at all the parts and components that make up an aircraft and all the different manufacturers that are involved, how many levels there are for a manufacturer to manage and to keep after. And I just off the top of my memory, I recall when they were making the G500 that there was issues with the manufacturers for the thrust reversers of that engine and the cells, and so they rely. There's a lot of reliability. The manufacturers rely on this person, so it's very, it's a hard thing to manage. Supply chain is a tough thing to manage today, especially in aviation. It's tough to manage. So I think it's getting better. Although I hear you can't find a Hawker windshield, so at all. So
windshields are difficult to begin with, just as a whole.
If anyone out there knows how to make a windshield, I suggest you start working. You can make a good amount of money.
Fantastic. Well, the poll that we just popped up. So, what is the biggest challenge you face when optimizing aircraft turnaround times? The response that we got was pretty overwhelmingly managing non-routine maintenance issues that arise, during turnarounds. So, you guys want to speak a little bit to how you handle non-routine maintenance and maybe share some tips and tricks towards that end?
Sure. I mean, as far as our operation is concerned, we're pretty heavy as far as our cadence. So we have about 15 minutes to turn an aircraft on a regular basis when we're in the middle of our operation. 30 minutes is basically the longest we would like. So if we have a mechanical during that time frame, we have maintenance on staff pretty much around the clock. So when they come into the main base here, we have maintenance here. We have line techs here that'll, be able to diagnose and deal with some of the issues, but it's primarily our mechanics on the third shift as we're a nighttime cargo operation. We also employ an on-call mechanic strategy to help those in between hours. So, a lot of communication through our dispatch and our communication center, and just making sure that everybody's informed so we can, make a decision and proceed forward as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we tend to forget as technicians when we're troubleshooting, especially on the line or an AOG situation, is the communication with your dispatch, communication with the crew, because you have to keep them up to date, almost hourly, maybe even more frequently, because it can really affect your operation. So if they need to start making plans, if they have passengers on board, maybe they're going to make alternate plans and you get some ground transportation. Or if you're lucky enough to have a multi-aircraft fleet, you may have to send in another airplane. So, which involves more crewing. So keeping your scheduling department up to date as to what's going on and when they can expect the next update, that always helps as well. When they can expect the next update. So communication is a big piece of that as well.
Yep, love it. And we're going to talk about communication here in a moment after the next topic. But I know that that's a hot topic that everybody wants to hear more about. All right, so I'm going to jump over to the next topic here for us, and we're going to talk a little bit about you guys experience one of the best practices for efficient and effective maintenance operations. And then towards that end, kind of how do you measure that success and the efficiency of your maintenance operation, and what KPIs do you use to measure that?
I see we're all silent on this one. So it's
No,
I think you're going to get. To me, I think it depends. It really depends on your operation. So availability and maximum availability and return to service of time for the aircraft are probably the biggest performance indicators, and those are the ones that are going to really affect your principles. If the aircraft's unavailable, or if the aircraft, you said the aircraft is going to be out of maintenance on August 25th, and here it is September 3rd, and you're still there, those kind of are the big indicators, the big drivers of your performance. You can probably get down into little more detailed items, but at the end of the day, that's the big picture. Can I use the aircraft, and is it here? Can I use it? And those are probably the two biggest ones that I would track.
Yeah, we proceed a little bit differently. I was going to let one of the other guys chime in first before I ran over the whole thing here.
Thanks, Bruce.
Sorry, I'm a talker. I'm willing to get up here and speak. As far as we're concerned, we fly over 14,000 hours a year, so we have a very structured maintenance schedule. We have a planned amount of time that every maintenance iteration should take. If it blows past the exit window, then we want to know why. We have one spare aircraft to operate 11. So right now, we're in that place where we really need the aircraft to perform at and when we decide it's necessary. So if it's going to be late, we need to know why. Then we try to mitigate the issues. Maybe we can push a portion of an inspection back, or we take something else and extend it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, what we measure is calendar time in and out, the amount of time it takes to get a standard inspection done, and if we've added anything into it, how many extra days is that taking and why? If it's a parts issue or reliability issue, then we've got other things. it's aging aircraft issues, as about half of our fleet is, I'd say mid 15,000 hour per airframe. So we've got some older airframes that have seen some more time. So, all of those things play a factor. But primarily Gantt chart, calendar, and time in and time out is what we use to make sure we're still efficient and effective.
And you're monitoring. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Jay.
No, I said one of the things I say, a lot of people look at dispatch reliability of the aircraft, and one of the things I would look at is not dispatch reliability, but how many what I would call I call it degraded dispatch, when you dispatch with an MEL. How many times does that happen? And are you carrying a lot of MELs on your airframes? Kind of an indication that it's maybe time to buy a different year or different model. And then of course we had recurring defect control was another one. If that kind of is if there was an indication of how your main team's performing, recurring defect control helps a lot. Are we do we need more training on the system, or is it the system is poorly engineered and we need to go back to the manufacturer and ask for more engineering support? So those are kind of couple of things that help.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I was thinking about. I think I was looking at the chat. Fern Campus has a couple of good points in there that OEM support that are really good. So check those out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the question I was going to ask is, you've got these KPIs that you're tracking those in real time. You're reviewing those on a daily basis, or are you reviewing those like weekly or monthly, or how frequently are you reviewing those KPIs?
For us, it's, we have a monthly schedule and a weekly schedule. So we, at the end of the week, we kind of want to see how the week went. And then I produce a report for our corporate entity once a month, how things went, how many hours each aircraft had, what our op tempo was like, how many aircraft accumulated extra hours rather than the average, and based on what issues. So if we have an aircraft that instead of the normal 150 to 200 hours ended up with 220 hours, so to speak, then an answer as to why we're weighing heavy on one airframe versus another. So, those things are always forefront when I'm looking at how we're operating.
Great.
Yeah, we weren't quite as frequent as that. So we would do a monthly recurrent defect control, and we would take a look on a monthly basis. We would look at how everything was performing. So not quite as I never operated as many hours as Bruce. Bruce has a very up-tempo operation, so
kind of unusual, yeah.
but it goes to speak to what I was saying earlier. When you ask these questions to different departments, depending upon your operation, you're going to get different answers and different perspectives. So, no matter what operation you're in, there's in this industry you have to find the solution that fits your operation. So it's everything's different.
For sure. Yeah. And that kind of leads into the next question I have. So the next question is, in this industry, there's always a tightrope between, maintaining safety and quality standards and maintaining speed and what you need to do and being able to keep the return to service times under control. So what strategies do you guys have to ensure that your maintenance departments are operating efficiently while also balancing maintaining safety and quality standards?
Yeah. So as a Part 91 operator, we have, we don't have any requirements for, a QC or a second set eyes or any of those types of things that you would see as a normal, 121, 135, 145 operator. So, in those instances where we have something that's safety of flight related, anything, because most of our aircraft are single engine turboprop, anything that we deal with the prop, the engine, flight controls, flaps, anything that is, going to be a safety of flight issue, we have a second person take a look. We have a couple of different oversight, I'll say operational type of safeties that we use. We have a second technician take a look at those things. We have a technician that is leading the inspection that will also take another look. Once an aircraft is done with a maintenance iteration, we'll have a member of our flight operations management team take it for a test flight. Doesn't matter what we did to it. We want to go ahead and run it through its paces and make sure that when we release it into service, because that's going to be at night in the, worst situations possible, we want to make sure that the pilot has a good airplane. So we have a bunch of different safeties that we try to put in place, as many layers as possible to make sure that we don't have an issue later.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We in my past we implemented, as a 91 operator, we had an RII program, and so when you would see one of our aircraft there, you would, just like the 135s, you would see our RII list on the side of the aircraft at a service center, and that was we put together the list. We usually would mimic what the standard for the airframe. Then we would add things that we felt that we wanted an extra set of eyes on there, and we would always ensure that before we would go into a heavy or any inspection at the service center, we would make sure that they were aware that we had an RII list and that we need their RII inspections to applied, and it was more enhanced than what they had for their 145. And then trying to, it's a hectic world out there sometimes. So having a second set of eyes all the time, having that as a common practice is helpful. But having a good policy and procedures manual, make sure that there's a standard to everything, that things that you're doing. We also had we implemented a strong parts inspection program, including supplemental suspected unapproved parts, to make sure people were aware of how to look for unapproved parts. So it was very rare we didn't use any vendors that were like that, but I want to make sure that the team was aware that this is a concern in the industry and how we do that. So there's a lot of things that, as a 91, you can take a lot of the 135 and 121 policies that are out there, and you can implement them into your operation, and it's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Just make it a policy and follow it.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey guys, this is Derek. I'm sorry, I lost my internet to the building. We've got some construction going on across the street, a new hangar being built, so I have to apologize for that. But I'm with you via cell phone, so I'm back in the conversation.
All right, thanks, Derek. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to jump over to the next topic. So this is one that we already touched on a little bit. So improving communication between the maintenance and flight operations team. So if you worked in a flight department without the right communication tools and processes, I know it can kind of feel like each department is, pointing fingers at the other because the maintenance team's trying to keep up with the inspections on the aircraft, and scheduling's trying to get the aircraft out to meet demand. And then you've got pilots raising squawks. So what advice do you have for other operators that are looking to get their maintenance and flight operations teams on the same page and just operating smoothly when it comes to communication?
Well, this is like the holy grail, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, Doug, if you want to jump in, go ahead, because I had to think about this one for a second.
Go ahead, Derek. I mean, I have a couple of things that I could share, but I want you to have a turn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was going to say it really at the grassroots level, it comes down to the culture of your flight department, and how well the flight department clicks as a team. You really have to respect each other. You have to know the pressures of each department, and know that we're all trying to get the same mission accomplished at the end of the day. So I think that was going to be my 2 cents is the culture of the entire department, and keeping those channels of communication open, and that conversation flowing freely. If there's ever a hitch, that hitch needs to be addressed quickly. Otherwise, it can tumble out of control pretty quick.
Yeah, I think culture is one of the biggest things. You know, we had we would be with the crew. We would do we had a sequence of events that was developed by our chief pilot, and it was fantastic. And it was had a set time where we would meet about an hour before they would, an hour and 10 minutes before the flight. We would go through the maintenance program, talk about the airframe, talk about what has been done to it, look at the next 90 days, make sure they're aware of the aircraft, and it created that line of communication with each other. And then we'd also sit there and ask them, what do you guys need to complete your mission today? Because at the end of the day, we're all together trying to move either your principal from this destination to the next destination safely and efficiently, and we're all in that together. So I think it's always nice when a crew member hears you saying, "What can I do for you to help you make your day easier?" And then you find that in return that definitely comes back. But so having a scheduled brief before and after the trip, and then as I was saying before, constant communication with your scheduling department helps. I think it's something that we all have. Everybody's pulled in multiple directions today, so try to make a dedicated schedule to talk to them, especially like I said before, especially during AOG events. Make sure you're on with them right away. Maybe have an AOG template email in your Outlook or system that you use, so it's the same template, same form going out during AOGs. They know where the plane is located. They know what's happening. They know when the next update is coming. And one thing, I have a little thing that's kind of a little bit unorthodox, so I'll throw it out there. To create a more cohesive flight department, this is hard to accomplish. So I'm gonna throw it out there. If you can train together, I think that helps a lot. I think if you can go to training together, especially if you're bringing on a new aircraft and you're going through maintenance initials and the pilot's going through pilot initials, if you can all go together and kind of go and if you could travel together, I found that flying with the crews helped a lot, helped change my perspective of what they go through, and that really helps a lot. That really helped a lot as well. So
yeah, with that kind of interaction, as far as what we do, it's relatively impossible for our group to go and train together. Unfortunately, I mean, that would be great. And high op tempo, high cadence, kind of operation. So we have two separate pillars that we're supporting. We have a corporate and a cargo flight department and maintenance department, basically. So as DOM, I'm a go-between, both of those sides of the house, but as well as our normal interaction. So we have operations dispatch that writes and revisits the schedule daily. So we have every day our flight schedule is updated. We fly the same routes every day, but weather happens, people are out, aircraft are broke, swaps have to happen, that kind of stuff. So we can go 5-10 revs of a flight schedule in a single day. We have our line techs do a pass down by email, blasted out to the group. Our maintenance team does a pass down and turnover every shift at the end of the shift, and and sends out that email to the entire group. We have on-call text and on-call dispatch phone number where anybody can call in and talk to them and figure out what's going on, where the aircraft's at, what the issue is. And that's a funneled point of contact that everybody goes in through dispatch and then back out from dispatch. So we have that single point of information control. So, our pilots call into the dispatch, and then dispatch will connect them with the mechanic, stay on the line, and have an idea of what's going on, so they can report that out in the regular ops report, which we also have at the end of every shift. So anything that is off schedule, off kilter, late, different than normal, it all gets reported out. And this is, every 8 to 12 hours, depending on which side of the house you're talking about, flight ops or maintenance. Maintenance running on an 8-hour shift versus flight ops running on 12. So there's overlap, there's, communication at every level, and, it's cadence. We don't it's never missed. Somebody's always sending that email out. You can, pretty much set your watch by it. So, that constant communication, that constant update is really what keeps us going as far as that interaction between all three of our departments.
And I want to say that something that when Bruce was speaking, he kind of may know something. A single point of contact, I think, helps. When you have too many people trying to send information, it gets very cloudy, very, very chaotic. Having one single source of information helps a lot. And it helps with, I'm reading the comment section, someone put in there about scheduling, about the expectations versus reality. I think that's something we all face that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I love that you mentioned, one of the kind of intangible ways that you can improve the communication is just teamwork and potentially training together. And we have had a lot of questions about training. Like one of the polls that we put up just recently, which area of maintenance department do you believe has the most potential for improvement? The response was maintenance and technician training and development kind of won that question. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how were you doing that cross-functional training? Can you give some examples of how you've seen that done before?
Cross-functional training you're asking about?
Yeah. So any instance where you trained together, maybe across across the maintenance and operations department.
So it's something to me, I never had an opportunity to deploy this theory of mine, but one of the things that I would find interesting is I would call it Tech Tuesday because I like tacos and I do Taco Tuesday. So Tech Tuesday, but it would be just, if you could find a time, it depends on your schedule. I know it's very hard to get everybody together in the flight department, but if you could put together, and you could do it through Teams, but pick a system of your aircraft, of your airframe, and talk about it together, crews and maintenance, and talk about what their experiences are with the system, and be surprised how much you can learn from the people from the flight crews who operate, and they know what their expectations are of that system, and then vice versa, the crews can learn a lot from the technicians about how heavily involved it is, how hard it is to get to. You think it's so easy, but for me to get to that card, I had to pull all these seats out, or heaven forbid, pull the galley out. So I think when you get them talking to each other, and they both have a better understanding, and including that sometimes is, hey, if we run into an issue, let's say the APUs, the first thing that we would do is, first part of our day is total plan out, and then you hit the APU button. Well, after you start the battery, but right. What are you going to do if it doesn't start up? And it's to sit there and go through that process with as a team together. Hey, flight crews, what are your thoughts? Maintenance, the technical crews, what are your thoughts? And to have them come together and just discuss that. And I think it really, because none of us here are experts on this. We all have, we learned it in this show, and if you haven't played it, if you have any issues with that system, you tend to forget about it a little bit. So it's nice to kind of refresh it and do a little bit of a mini recurrent class with each other in-house, if you can. It's hard to coordinate it, but it's something that gets everybody on the same page and gets everyone talking together. And then usually I'm assuming, since we're all in aviation, eventually the topic will veer off to something else, and then we'll all leave the room hopefully laughing and smiling.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to share that our safety manager set up a every few month quarter, once every other quarter, that we have one day a week where the operation hasn't quite started yet, where we gather for half a day, and that's everybody, all pilots, all mechanics, all management, admin, staff, dispatch, everybody, and we get together in the hangar. We have IT come and set up a screen. We run through some different subjects. We talk and discuss. Usually as a DOM, I'm somewhere on the side of FOD, maintenance fatigue, human factors, subject matter, just to kind of get the conversation going and getting people talking about, the different interactions that we have and how we can, fix some of the things that we see as broken on a daily interaction.
Love it. Yeah, I think safety is a very logical like intersection between all the different departments to bring everyone together like that. I've seen, emergency response planning and tabletop drills and things like that be used in that way.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to jump over to the next topic here. So really at the end of the day, we know that the quality of the product, the safety of a flight operation comes down to the people that are working in that flight operation. So I want to talk a little bit about how you've motivated your teams to perform at their best. So how do you manage and motivate your maintenance teams of technicians to achieve that optimal productivity while also making sure that they achieve a level of job satisfaction that keeps them really engaged in what they're doing?
And so obviously right now, this one's kind of tough, right? Everybody's shorthanded. We're all dealing with, the lack of available staff for, just day-to-day operations. It is a normal as of now. So some of the things that I've done here in the past couple of months and over the last 2 years is, I've implemented, as long as we don't have anything heavy going on, if you want to take time off, take time off. If you don't have any time left in the bank, well, then you can take it unpaid. If you really need time off, just go. If you have a family issue, you don't need to ask, you just need to go, and then send me a text, after you get there. Take care of your family, take care of your personal health and your well-being, and make sure that you're taken care of, because if you don't have yourself taken care of, you don't have anything left to give anybody else. And as far as motivating the teams to provide their best effort at work, I mean, most small shops have one level, maintenance, and then there's a director of maintenance, and that's it. They don't see any career progression. They don't see any difference between what they do today and where it's going to get them in 5 years, 10 years down the road. They're still just going to be a mechanic, and this still takes time in big companies regardless, but kind of rewriting the script on how the hangar is formed and making different levels of technician and kind of putting separation and showing career progression and, places for them to excel and move up into. The larger the operation gets, the more the structure needs to change to support the variation of different operations. So in that, you create management and supervisor spots that people can then, work towards. But you've got to show them the path from where they're currently at and what they're missing to get to where they want to be. And then work with them on those as well. So, I have line techs that want to be, A&P mechanics. We're working on their schooling. I have line techs that want to be pilots and work in dispatch. I've actually promoted a couple here. We have, mechanics on the floor that eventually want to, be manager or DOM or, any of those variations in between. And it's just, meeting with them on a regular basis, discussing where they want to be, how to get there, and then, helping them along the way, showing them the steps they need to take. That is far more motivating than, a $2 pay raise or a pizza Friday or any of that. Being physically and mentally involved in their well-being.
Yeah, I was gonna point out. So we launched a poll. Which factors do you think make the biggest impact on motivating your team? And the lowest percentage response was incentives and rewards. And that kind of points to exactly what you just said. At a certain point, it's really about someone's well-being and the fulfillment they get in their work. Maybe not adding another zero to the paycheck.
Right. You can get $1 an hour pay raise anywhere. What we're trying to provide is something different. It's a cultural difference, and that's really what we're trying to put forward into our group. And it has made a difference. Verifiably, that my leadership can see a difference in my mechanics from before I started to now. So, that to me is far more valuable than, fighting for a, $2 pay raise.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
I would.
it.
So I want to jump. I think Bruce is exactly right. I think when people want to know that you care, because $2 because caring for someone doesn't get taxed. It has more value than you think. It returns. It's probably one of the greatest returns on investment in your that you can provide. I was also going to say ice cream, but apparently it's not going to be.
I mean, it's fun, right? To have ice cream or pizza with everybody, but really, that's just to get the conversation started.
That's all. Yeah, that's all. Unless they're lactose intolerant, then we're all in trouble.
That starts a different conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Right. Yeah. So, and we may have already pretty much answered these questions. I had 2 more questions for you guys, like some tips to prevent burnout, and then how can you in a very practical way help a struggling team member perform maybe better than they are today.
Coaching, so much fun. So we all have at least one person in our past or in our current hangar somewhere that has struggled. Maybe they're new, maybe they came from somewhere else and they weren't doing all that well there and nobody cared to support them. You just got to find that one thing that gets through to them and then capitalize on that and use it as that pivot point. I have an employee right now that I'm working with that he's been doing this for 4 or 5 years, but he still really hasn't come into his own. He hasn't really caught on to it. He's been in a couple of different places and nowhere did somebody really grab a hold of him and say, look, you need to just tell me when you don't understand or when you don't know or whatever, and we can work with you and move you into the position where you can be at least an expert on one thing, and then build that confidence. And then they become that expert on other things as well because they're confident enough to go in and try other things. It's a confidence builder and a constant interaction. It can be taxing. And ways to prevent burnout. Me personally, hobbies. You got to have something where you can turn off your brain, turn off the cell phone, put all the electronics away, and get away from the day to day. And a lot of people are going to think this is funny. It's out there in the world for everybody to know. Anyways, if you look on my LinkedIn profile, it's all over the place. I'm what's known as an AFOL. I am an adult fan of Lego. You can turn off your brain and build something really cool. And it gives me not only, some mental well-being and some mental peace, but it also gives me a way to interact with my kids. Maintenance is pretty labor intensive and, very time intensive. So I'm always involved in something. So it gives me that in to come back and kind of pick up something that my kids and I were building together. And, it shuts all that outside stuff off, which everybody needs. So you got to find that hobby that allows you to shut everything else off, whether it's fishing or building old cars or painting or whatever it is. For me, it's dealing with ABS plastic stacked in different shapes.
Love it. I love it. All right. So we're going to move over to kind of a section of the webinar where I'm going to shoot some rapid fire questions at you guys. And then you're going to answer back basically just a 1 word or 1 sentence response there. So we'll crank through these and then we'll jump into the chat and try to get to as many of the questions that we haven't addressed already. So the first question I have is, what technologies or tools have had the most significant impact on your maintenance operations?
Is Derek on the line still?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay, Derek, I'm sorry. We seem like we're taking up most. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, no worries. I think tools, all of the information technology, all of it, you name it across the line, everything from airframe platform technology, avionics, to of course maintenance tracking. The more intuitive, the more user friendly your software, your product is going to be. the more efficient that you're going to be at your job. And again, going back to job satisfaction and finding that balance and finding that that in between, striking that balance in between, personal life and work life. The more efficient you are at your job, the less time you have to spend, doing those updates, printing those cards, putting those work packages together. The more time you can spend, doing those hobbies and turning your cell phone off. So, that is absolutely key.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that, and I know this is going back, 10, 15 years, but that iPad changed everything in aviation. I mean, that iPad very quickly made it into the flight stations of aircraft all over the world. Everything that we did we were iPad based. I mean, we used what we used to call flight docs. Everything was on the iPad. We were electronic, so that really changed a lot. All of our manuals were on there. Anywhere in the world, you had the manual with you. Anywhere in the world, you had the whole entire logbook for your aircraft. You could look up anything just from your iPad, and that really changed. Made us mobile. Got us, and made it really changed a lot. And I think the ability of an aircraft to send you live reports while it's flying is changed a lot. It's a lot of information comes out of these airplanes today, and sometimes just sorting through the information is a challenge in and of itself. Makes me long for the old days of the relays and P3s and all those transistors and vacuum tubes. But a lot of information in those aircraft.
All right. So second question here. What's your top priority when managing maintenance operations? Safety, efficiency, or cost effectiveness?
Safety.
Yeah, that's first principle, safety. And safety, the other two come drive off of safety as well. If you're not safe, the other two are going to go down too. So safety first.
That is the unchanging leg in the triangle. Safety, correct. Speed, or cost. Safety is constant. The other two, we'll figure out.
Love it. Yep.
Very well said.
I heard someone say once, slow is safe and safe is fast. So that's you right. gotta stick with it. The third question I have is, how do you stay up to date with the latest advancements in aviation maintenance practices?
Constantly educate yourself. I'm constantly reading. I attend, seminars kind of like this, listen to other people, share their wealth of information. All the manufacturers have seminars where they pass out the latest technical information, Gulfstream, Pilatus, if you're a helicopter operator, Airbus, Bell, Leonardo, they all have the same kind of interactive forums. They do them once or twice a year at a minimum. Get involved with those. If you don't know how to get in touch with those or get involved with those, contact your customer support rep from any one of those manufacturers. They'll be able to put you in contact with the right people. Man, there's so much information out there.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Derek.
No, I was going to say, maintaining good relationships with everyone. It's everyone from, tech reps to vendors to guys across the field, and it just gives you more and more opportunities to benchmark with those people and keep those open lines of communication. In this industry, you can put yourself on an island pretty quick, but it takes good communication and effort to maintain those good relationships with your neighbors and your vendors, and it just gives you more opportunities to talk with them. And, what's the latest way? What internet system are you putting on your airplane? Hey, did you hear about this and this vendor? Tell me more about it, kind of.
Oh yeah, corporate aviation for sure. That's a community.
Yeah,
everybody shares so much information there.
Yeah, you can see in the chat on this. I've been looking through the chat, and there's some fantastic information in there. Just that alone. Just if you just read the chat, you're gonna learn a lot right there for some great people.
Yeah. All right. My last question on the rapid fire is if you had one piece of advice to give to other directors of maintenance, what would that be?
Be patient.
Mm. Yeah, I would say I was told once that you are not the super technician behind the desk. You are now a people manager and a resource getter, and make sure that you have technicians. Make sure that they're in the right environment and have the resources that they need to do their job well. And you're not perfect. No one is. So you're human, just like everyone else.
Great. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and open the floor to Q&A. So please type your questions in the chat. While you guys are typing those in, I'm going to go through and pick out some questions from the chat that haven't been answered yet, or at least I don't think they've been answered yet. Cheryl Barden had a really good question, which I'm just curious about. So speaking of pay raises, has the escalating pay raises and like salary requirements for pilots and flight attendants affected the morale of maintenance technicians?
Doesn't it always? Yeah, I think as a whole, that's a pretty easy, resounding yes. And that's one of those things you have to have an open conversation about with everybody. Set realistic expectations and say, look, we're in this, extreme fluctuation right now. What you see out there isn't necessarily what's going to happen in here. We're working on whatever you're working on. Be honest, be upfront, and don't tell them anything you're not really working on, because, as hangars work, rumor spreads, people talk, and, you don't want to be pushing bad information out there. I side with honesty and communication 100% on that all the time.
Yeah, was that Cheryl who asked that question?
Yes.
You're saying? So it's funny. I was going to reference. She has a fantastic. She wrote in 2022 about are we asking maintenance techs to do too much? If you have opportunity, look up, read that article that she wrote. It's fantastic, and it's about how we are facing task saturation and how we have to control what we do, and how much is expected of a maintenance technician. But I think whenever you see someone else get a pay raise, and no matter what industry you're in, it's just human nature that the ones who do not get the pay raise will become jealous, and it's hard to control. Expect it, but it's hard to control it. So just
the grass is always greener.
It is. Well, I was told somebody one time. They said, well, no one told you not to be a pilot. Like, fair enough. So, I love what I do. I love working on aircraft, and I never had any desire to fly. And those that do, it's a hard job. It's you're away from your family a lot, so it's and there's a shortage there, so that's just the market.
Yeah. I think a guy I interviewed recently for a position put it well. Most maintenance people are pretty passionate about what they do. If you did it for the money, then you're basically in the wrong environment. There's no rich aircraft mechanic. There's no famous aircraft mechanic. People forget who Charles Taylor is. We don't do it for that. There's got to be some level of satisfaction in your job and your day-to-day and what you do and what you're capable of. And that's really where most of us, that hang on to this environment for the long haul, we're all kind of in that same boat.
Yep. And
yeah, I would agree.
I do see another question in here from TJ. How and where can technology help augment and serve your workforce? And who are the most innovative partners in this space?
Well, TJ, I don't know if we're supposed to say the sponsor here.
Well, it definitely doesn't hurt, but the guys, that we work with at Veryon do a pretty good job of helping us out when it comes to some of our interactions with the system. It's people versus technology, and you're always going to have problems with that. And I find that the very direct support and the quick response is helpful.
Yeah, I would agree. Veryon is offers a lot of for the maintenance side, offers you a lot of options. One of the things I always liked about them was the support, the IT support from them, because honestly, we know the maintenance program. When I call, it's because I can't figure out how to get the program to produce this report, and they always answer the phone, always walk me through it. And it was a pretty good. And I also like the inventory management side of Veryon. But for me, and I'm not saying because you guys are the sponsor, I really thought that was probably the best one. But get some demos, try them out. That's you may find find something that fits your operation. But there are quite a few out there, and the number's growing. There's lots of lots of new things out there. One of the things I haven't had a chance to use, I don't know if you have, Bruce, but or Derek, but that I don't want to I don't know the gentleman's on here, but the MRO Insider seems to be using technology seems to really be a disruptor in that space. So that's a pretty good. So that's somebody who's using technology to solve a business pain. So it's starting to bleed into the maintenance side a little more now.
Fantastic, guys. Well, I have time for one more quick question that I'm going to pull out of the chat here. There was a question from, I'm not going to be able to find it now. Okay, Brad, and he asks, what are the differences you're seeing in the younger versus older applicants in your field?
Work ethic. And in some cases, a lot of the younger guys haven't had a lot of technical interaction before they decided to become a mechanic. 20 years ago, schools had wood shop, auto shop. Somebody could try out being hands-on with something before they were thrust into a career. Now that the majority of that is gone from high schools and junior high schools, you have people that are figuring out that they may or may not be a hands-on kind of person after the fact. And, you've got to either deal with that one way or another. Now, most of the previous generation, I won't say older guys because I fall into that. We all kind of knew that we liked something a little more hands-on because we were given the opportunity to try it at some point in time, wood shop, metal shop, that kind of stuff beforehand. And then, oh yeah, I really like this. Maybe I could turn this into a career. I think that some of that is part of the current issue. Hands-on is not pushed in any public school anymore.
Sure.
Yeah, but I will say, a lot of it, we were brought up differently. I think Bruce and I are probably from the same generation where we went to school without computers. We were like the last generation to do that. And this new generation has information at their fingertips now. But I've enjoyed working with most of them. I think they bring a new perspective to our industry, especially focusing on work-life balance is something that my generation put to the side, and this generation is saying, hey, this is important to us. And I think that's they have some great. They bring a lot of great. They bring a lot of great things to the industry.
That's great.
So I enjoy working with them.
That's great. So the last thing we're going to do here before we wrap up, I want to end with one final poll question that you'll see on the screen. If you would, please let us know if you'd like to learn more about maintenance tracking software. We'd love to show you. We'd love to give you a demo and help you get more uptime out of your aircraft. I would like to thank our panelists today. Thank you, Derek, Bruce, Jay. Really appreciate your time sharing a lot of your wisdom that was, I'm sure, very hard earned. And thank you all for being active participants. So many questions in the chat and responses to the polls. We hope that you found this a valuable and insightful session. I'm going to pass it back over to Elena.
Thanks, JD. And thank you again to all of our panelists. This was truly a great conversation today. This concludes today's Thought Leadership webinar sponsored by Veryon. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available shortly. Please stick around for another minute after we close to take a brief survey that will allow us to further enhance your webinar experience. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.